So today's topic is about people who should basically be in jail right now. The church has a long history of protecting sexual predators within their walls. And it's bad enough that so many of them have policies that involve protecting predators and keeping victims in harm's way. But when they use our legal system to protect sexual predators, that really makes my blood boil. So today I'm going to be quoting from an article by CBS Austin. Mormon church doesn't have to report confessed child sex abuse. Arizona Supreme Court rules. You have to be such a sick individual to be in favor of this ruling. You truly do. There is no sensible, logical, remotely reasonable argument that you can make that they made the right call here. The reality is that these religious groups use our legal systems to protect rapists and keep victims in harm's way. The Arizona Supreme Court has ruled that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can refuse to answer questions or turn over documents under a state law that exempts religious officials from having to report child sex abuse if they learn of the crime during a confessional setting. Now, I never attended churches that had confessionals. They've always been very icky and odd to me. So the whole concept of confession was kind of presented to me in a very negative light, because you are basically going to an individual to confess wrongdoing and have that individual then tell you what you should do, when you should be instead going to God and confessing your sins to Him. So just from a general Christian standpoint, confessions don't really make sense to me. And there are many examples, not just this one, of things like confessions being used against the congregation itself and against victims. So the way I see it, the whole concept of a confession in a church is a man-made manipulative scam. So basically in churches that do this, you have individuals who are designated to take confessions. There will be a private area for this conversation. A lot of churches will have some type of barrier between the person confessing and the person taking the confession, so that there can be some privacy there. And these are basically considered holy practices. You can have practices that you deem holy. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. But when you use religious freedom as some kind of argument to keep children in harm's way, and a state Supreme Court backs you up on that, we have a problem. You should not have any type of privilege to hurt people just because you're a religious organization. A lawsuit filed by child sex abuse victims accuses the church, widely known as the Mormon Church, two of its bishops, and other church members of conspiracy and negligence in not reporting church member Paul Adams for abusing his older daughter as early as 2010. This negligence, the lawsuit argues, allowed Adams to continue abusing the girl for as many as 7 years, a time in which he also abused the girl's infant sister. There's no rational argument that you can make that these church members do not bear some direct responsibility for this girl's continued abuse. They knew what was going on and didn't care enough to take any action. And on top of not reporting the abuse that they learned about, Adams was not immediately excommunicated from the church. So not only did they not report abuse that they knew about, they knowingly kept a sexual predator in close proximity to children in the church. That is sick. The absolute gall of churches like this to lecture the rest of us on morals when this is the disgusting behavior that's acceptable within their walls is absolutely outrageous. Lynn Cadigan, an attorney for the Adams children who filed a lawsuit, criticized the court's ruling. Quote, "Unfortunately, this ruling expands the clergy privilege beyond what the legislature intended by allowing churches to conceal crimes against children." End quote. She's exactly right, and that's exactly the problem. These people literally have a legal right to cover up the sexual abuse of children. That should not be a privilege or a right that anyone gets in a civilized society. The idea that it should be allowed to sexually abuse someone or to protect someone that you know is sexually abusing someone just because they are religious is so unacceptable. And then, of course, these animals put out their own little statement. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints agrees with the Arizona Supreme Court's decision. We are deeply saddened by the abuse these children suffered. The church has no tolerance of abuse of any kind. The whole fucking case is about your church being willing to tolerate abuse. What definition of tolerance are you using there, sweetheart? You did not report the crime and you allowed him to continue attending the church. I'd say that's pretty tolerant of abuse. You can't agree with this decision without siding with a sexual predator. This is not a religious freedom case. This is about failure to protect victims. Religious freedom is about choosing what religious text you want to read. It's about choosing where and when you want to worship, what guidelines you want to follow, what church groups you want to be a part of or attend. Being religious should not give you a literal get out of jail free card for sexually abusing children. So if you're gonna put out a bullshit statement like this, in this particular situation, just withhold any comments that imply any level of concern for the victims here. Adams had also posted videos of himself sexually abusing his daughters on the internet, boasted of the abuse on social media, and confessed to federal law enforcement agents who arrested him in 2017 with no help from the church. Thank goodness that the Arizona Supreme Court had the courage it took to protect the religious privacy of this man who then went on to publicly boast about the crime. I feel like that part just makes this case even more infuriating. Superior Court Judge Laura Cardinal had this to say, quote, Adams' overt acts demonstrate a lack of repentance and a profound disregard for the principles of the church. His acts can only be characterized as a waiver of the clergy penitent privilege, end quote. I am so tired of religious organizations being referred to as groups that have principles, especially in cases like this. I agree with her general sentiment about clergy penitent privilege, but that privilege should not legally exist when people are in danger and being hurt. So the fact that he does not seem repentant by church standards, that's not even the point. That's not even close to the point. And frankly, this fool does not need to try to live up to the principles of a church that has no principles. Stuff like this is exactly why I don't just refer to myself as an atheist. I am not just an atheist. I am an anti-religious atheist. I am not neutral when it comes to religion. Because it is literally dangerous to look at religious organizations as automatically moral groups. Frankly, a lot of them are not. Most of them are not. And they are using our legal system to justify sexual abuse of children. Now, this particular case does not involve a child being hurt directly by a church member, but we all know there are plenty of stories I could cover that do. And a lot of the same arguments are used. I don't give two shits whether or not the church feels like he is repentant enough. I don't give a shit whether or not this judge feels that he is repentant enough. It was known that he was a threat to his child, and nothing was done about it. And on top of that, the Arizona Supreme Court protected this bishop in this situation. That is appalling. And trust you me, we will be getting to every single member involved in this Arizona Supreme Court case. Clergy in Arizona, as in many other states, are required to report information about child sexual abuse or neglect to law enforcement or child welfare authorities. An exception to that law, known as the clergy penitent privilege, allows members of the clergy who learn of the abuse through spiritual confessions to keep the information secret. There is no reason that religious groups should get a special exception that allows them to cover up the sexual abuse of children. And for any of these religious organizations, if they want people to stop bringing up sexual abuse of children, if they want all of us to look at those things as being in the past, then stop going to our court system and demanding that you be allowed to continue this behavior. Because this decision was made in April of 2023. Okay, we're not talking about something that happened 50 years ago. We're not talking about something that happened 80 years ago. We are talking about something that happened almost 1 year ago. Bishop Herod should have just as much legal obligation to report this crime if he overheard it in the church parking lot as he would if he heard it in the confession. The church has basis defense in the lawsuit on the privilege, asserting that Herod and a second bishop who learned of Adam's confession, Robert Mozzie, had no legal obligation to report him for abusing his older daughter and appealed Cardinal's ruling. So my first question is, how did the second bishop learn about this? If clergy pertinent privilege is so important, if it is so special, if it is so holy, if it is so untouchable, how come it doesn't cover gossip? But it does cover you not reporting sexual abuse to law enforcement. How does that work exactly? Why didn't these lousy people in Arizona have the courage to just cut the crap and call this what it is? This is two grown adults conspiring to cover up the sexual abuse of a child. I don't care what church practices this guy was involved in at the time he was sexually abusing his children. I really don't. I don't give a shit. That has no relevancy here. None. Second of all, if these churches want to act like they're such moral beacons, what does legal obligation have to do with anything? Well, I guess we could have reported the abuse, but in a technical sense, we were not legally obligated to. That's not a standard to hold yourself to. Not having a particular legal obligation does not mean you don't have a moral one. The Mormon church is extremely abusive. They are a very abuser-friendly environment. And for anyone who feels that is too broad of a brush, then explain to me how this got to a state Supreme Court. They are using our legal system to protect predators. I do not care if anyone feels I am being too broad here. An Associated Press investigation of the clergy privilege shows it exists in 33 states, and that the Mormon Church, often joined by the Catholic Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, and other faiths, has successfully lobbied against attempts to reform or eliminate it. Tax the churches. You want to direct political agendas, you want to use our legal system to hurt people, literally. Tax churches. Churches are not this neutral ground where people just come to worship. There are probably a handful of churches who actually fall into that category. Most of them are actively lobbying for certain things in our court system and in our politics. Most of them could really be viewed as political groups, and if that's what they want to be, then they should have to pay. And for anyone who thinks I'm taking it too far, how are they not taking it too far? Is my question. How are they not taking it too far? This is an outrageous case. If this isn't making your blood boil, there might be something wrong with your soul. It amazes me that the people who spend the most time in church show us that they do not have a soul. Religious rights should not mean that people get special exceptions to hurt other people. Bishop Herod is a coward and made a decision to allow a child to be in an unsafe situation. Other types of people go to jail when they cover up child sexual abuse. But if you're religious, if you're part of a religious organization, you get a literal get out of jail free card. That is ridiculous. Herod ought to be locked up. I wonder how much these Arizona justices got paid off to make this ruling. In a separate video, I'll be going over what they had to say about this case. I honestly already have some pretty bad gut feelings about what I'm going to read in their statements. There are actually, quite honestly, quite a few really sick stories that I'm going to be covering pretty soon. But anyways, that is all I have for this video. Please leave your thoughts below. If there is another similar case that you would like me to talk about, I would love to hear about it. If you enjoyed this video, have this video, or even just a quarter of this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.